What is up, YouTube? A little windy out today, but got a little full day of training today. It's Monday. I think it's December 29th, just past Christmas. Hope everyone had a great Christmas, by the way. And New Year's is coming up. Hope everyone's got a great New Year's. But today, I've been sick the last 2 days, so I've been able to train. I was in bed. I slept 16 and a half hours on Saturday, and then yesterday I was still pretty sick, so we're getting back at it today. Starting off, though, something I never do, and you've probably never seen me do on this channel. We're actually going to start off with stretching and mobility. I've realized my lack of mobility and how it's now hindering me in my performance. So I'm going to start implementing mobility sessions, probably 4, maybe try to do it every morning, but I'm walking to the gym now. As you can hear the roads, we'll get into the mobility.
Boys and girls, I apologize. I said I was going to start saying guys. My apologies. All right, guys. Today's going to be mostly a voiceover because I broke my mics and they're getting fixed soon, but I'll have one for my next video. Anyways, I started with mobility on this day. You know me, I never stretch, so I'm trying to stretch more. I'll put a screenshot of what I did on this day, and this is just a random conglomeration of stuff I got online, but essentially I'm really trying to open up my hips and my lats because those are my two problem areas that have the least amount of mobility, especially my lats, and I've been noticing it impacting like my front rack positioning, my squats as far as my hips depth and that. So the reason I'm starting to stretch more is so I can get deeper ranges of motion in my actual lift. So again, I'll probably do this about 3 times a week, at least for a couple weeks until I start seeing improvements. Took me about 30 to 40 minutes, super chill. I did it earlier in the day. And then it also helps that when I went into my lift, I didn't have to take as long to warm up because I will say I love lifting, but one of my biggest barriers to entry on lifting, if I procrastinate or not, is how sore or stiff I am. And I'm really sore stiff. The worst part is warming up, the first 10 minutes. But once you're warmed up, you feel good, you're ready to go. But the hardest part is starting. So I figured if I start doing a little bit of mobility, especially on my leg days where I am usually pretty tight and, leg days are already long enough, then this could help me when I do actually start the session to kind of be a little more energized in the beginning. So did this about 35, 40 minutes of stretching, held most of these stretches for about 30 seconds or a minute, and then these mobility exercises at the end for about 10 reps each time. Did this around 9 a.m. and then I came back to the gym at 2 to do the full lower body day. But again, really trying to open up my hips and improve my front rack positioning with that. So that was a mobility session. And then to fast forward about 5 hours, I came in for the leg day. So again, the warm-up period wasn't as long because I was already pretty warm. I did some activation drills, some lateral walks, some banded TKEs, just to get moving again, and then I got into my seated jump. So recently what I've been doing is I'll actually start warming up from my cleans and I'll get to my top weight of cleans and then I'll get into my jump. So I end up doing 15 reps of those seated jumps. Seated jumps are obviously awesome to work on rate of force development as you're going for that dead stop. You don't have that stretch shortening. So I have those OVR sensors on there measuring my jump height. Did 15 total reps, resting as needed in between, usually about 15 to 20 seconds. I did about 15 reps in, I think it was like 8 minutes. So again, kind of a shorter rest period, but making sure I'm nice and fresh. I end up getting, I think I hit like 28 inches. So nothing crazy. I've definitely noticed my jump heights going down over the last couple months, but I'm also heavier. So, kind of makes sense. Usually I'm hitting around 30, 31, but recently kind of been that 27, 28 range. But anyways, as far as the cleans, I did 4 sets of 3 at power cleans. So recently I've been pulling from blocks and I was over the last couple of weeks, and I was like, I'm gonna start pulling from the floor again, get strong off that. So worked up to 286 or 130 kilos for a triple here, and moved pretty well. Did 2 sets there at the end. I believe I did 264, 275, 286, 286, and then squats. This was the main thing we were preparing for. So I've been doing this top set, back off set approach where I'm working up in weight. I worked up to, this is about 92% of my estimated 1 rep max. 500 pounds. I said, I want an MF and triple today. And I would not be denied for that triple. I hit 495 for a triple the week before. And I was going to try to do that again, but I was like, you know what? Slap some 2.5s on that sucker. Let's make it 500, baby. And I was pretty stoked I got through it because the first 2 reps moved really well. I felt loose as an MF and goose. It was obviously it was a combination of that stretching. I was also sick the 2 days before. And I slept so much, and obviously I took 2 rest days, so my body was pretty well rested, and I was just loose. So I'm definitely going to implement those stretching on the lower body days earlier in the day. Again, it helps so I don't have to warm up as long when I get into it, and then also I feel looser, man. I'm such a tight, stiff person that it kind of feels loose. It feels good to feel like that. I felt like a, what is it, like Wagyu beef? Isn't that isn't to get Wagyu beef, they make the cows like they fatten them up and they don't move them around. So they're nice and like pliable. That's how I felt on squats, baby. It felt great. So, anyways, hit that top set of 500, and then I did back off sets. I actually did a 3x5. I was pretty surprised at 465, which is about 87%, which honestly pretty good. Now, these one rep maxes could be adjusted. I'm using an estimated one rep max of 540, and I am hitting percentages that, usually 92% is like a 4 rep max if you're going all out. So I'm pretty happy I'm getting within a rep of that. And all the sets are 0 reps of reserve, essentially a 9 to 10 RPE. So obviously taking a lot of time there. And then main posterior chain strength was these RDLs. 3 sets here, end up getting 6 reps of 425. Slight bend the knee, pushing the hips back, trying to hover right above the ground. And then for some of the accessory work, we did leg press, 2 sets, 2 sets of a hamstring curl, 2 sets of a leg extension. So these leg presses whooped my freaking ass. I mean, I think I was doing 9 plates a side on this 45 degree. The first couple reps, my quads felt like they were going to pop. Ended up getting 7. And the second set, I dropped a plate on each side and ended up getting like 9. So I kind of like that. I'm doing a lot of that recently where I'm doing like a top set, back off set, or reverse pyramid where I go my heavier sets, which is different than what I've traditionally always done. I've always done like a descended pyramid where I always did I worked up to my heaviest sets last. Obviously, when you do it that approach, you're obviously fatigued from the prior sets. It can help because it can potentiate you and continue to warm you up. It kind of depends on the type of lift you are. I've always been a lifter where it takes me a while to get going and to get warmed up, especially on leg days. So I almost always liked, especially my heavy squat days, it's like almost doing doing that 3x5 and then a triple at the end. But I think moving forward, I suck at singles, doubles, and triples, so I really want to get better at that. And I think doing those earlier in the session when I'm freshest obviously makes the most amount of sense. So that's what I've been doing with that strategy. So again, hit a heavy squat, hit a heavy RDL, and then for the accessories, I like doing leg presses on my squat day. So leg press has been a recent addition. I didn't start leg pressing until this past year, like literally 12 years of lifting. I never leg pressed this past year. And I've been loving it as an accessory movement where I just do 2 really hard, heavy sets. Same day as squats, which I get similar movement pattern, but they are a lot different. Squat, you have to stabilize the barbell, whereas a leg press, it's nice. It's a lot less mentally fatiguing because all I have to think about is just pushing with my legs. So been liking doing that accessory on my squat days, and then for my hamstrings, hit an RDL variation where it's more of a hip dominant movement, and then obviously a seated hamstring curl, getting more of a knee dominant, and then I like a little more volume, so I like hitting some sort of leg extension here to 2 sets there. So obviously a higher volume leg day, but very good intensity throughout where I'm training hard, only doing 2 sets in the accessories, but going very heavy on every set like usual. So overall good leg day. Started with my jumps and my cleans for some power work. Squats is my main strength work. RDLs is my secondary strength, and then leg press, hamstring curl, leg extensions as my accessory movements. And then we did a trifecta this day. We came back to the gym about 3 to 4 hours later, and I just did some abs. So I like sprinkling abs like at least twice a week, but usually 3 times a week. Some days I'll do it on my leg days later in the day. Some days I'll do it usually on my push and pull days. I'll do cardio. I'll do the lift and then I'll do cardio later in the day. And usually I'll do my abs with the cardio. But I kind of like the idea of like, I'm already doing 2 sessions that day. So on this lower body day, it just makes sense. Coming back, I have the time. Again, maybe I'll do this every leg day. Maybe I don't. As long as I'm hitting my abs 2 to 3 times a week, I'm happy with that. Ideally 3. So what I did, 2 movements. I did a reverse crunch on the GHD, which is one of my favorites, and then a cable crunch. And then I supersetted the cable crunches with a calf raise. So as you noticed, I did do the calves earlier in the day. One, kind of like abs. If I do them at the end of my leg day, I am so fried. I'm just kind of going through the motions. So if I get to rest in between about 3-4 hours and come back, I'm going to get a lot more out of my abs and calf work. And it's not overly fatiguing. So I'm able to do it later in the day. It's not like I'm coming back and doing another leg day. Like I'm able to withstand the volume of doing abs and calves later in the day. So if you find yourself, especially like anyone at the end of a session, if you're fatigued from the main movements, if you're able to, like, especially abs, calves, maybe even arms, side delts, rear delts, like, maybe you go home, rest for a little bit, and then you hit like a little feeder session later in the day where it's like a 20-30 minute session. And that's when you hit your accessory stuff. So then you can actually give it the full, time it needs, because now you have rest and food in between. Now, obviously, that only works if you live close to a gym or if you have a home gym, or if you like lifting twice a day, you can definitely try that out. So that's what I did. Full voiceover for this, but I'll finish the video with a little walk back, some end of the year reflections. Appreciate you guys.
All right, walking back. Luckily, I only live like 10 minutes away from the gym. Absolute cheat code. Super fortunate to live so close to one of the gyms I go to, because yeah, I literally walked there this morning. I walked there again. I get easy way to get my steps in. But anyways, New Year's is coming, and I know everyone gets that New Year's, new me mindset, which I love. I don't understand in fitness, and I'll be honest, I do not like these content creators or these fitness people who like look down upon people who are like starting a New Year's resolution. It's like, the memes you see, it's like, oh, buckle up, like New Year's is coming, the gym's gonna be packed. I think that stuff's super cheesy and super like dumb, because who cares if someone starts on New Year's? I get some people, maybe they don't stick to their New Year's resolutions, but some will, and it'll be a life-changing event once they start working out for real. So I think it's a cool thing. If you're, maybe you're someone you want to get new habits, or maybe you want to work out for the first time, it's not bad to use New Year's as a reason to do so. It's a clean slate. I use New Year's all the time to do new things, and I'm sure I fail a lot of them, but, try to set some good ones and stick to it. I remember last year, for the first time, I like sat down for like 2 hours on like on January 1st, and I went through like the whole 2024, and then I kind of wrote out my goals for 2025. And I've always had goals for the year, but I never really written them down until last year. It's kind of cool looking back upon them. And like, for example, social media, I wanted to have 250,000 followers on Instagram. I ended up having, 283,000. I wanted to have 100K on YouTube, that was a super ambitious one. I'll finish the year with like 41,000, which is honestly, I started the year at like 6,000. And I started the year on Instagram at like 120. So super cool to see that. But I think it's cool to have goals, and yeah, definitely challenge you guys to write some goals out, whatever they are. Use New Year's. New Year's, again, I don't know. I don't understand why people hate on people for like starting a new thing on New Year's. Like, that's a perfect time to do so. It's a new year. It's a clean slate. So I know I'll probably be going through 2025 and also thinking of some new goals for 2026. I definitely challenge you to write like goals that are like pretty ambitious, something that's ambitious and maybe realistic, or maybe ambitious, but you might not even attain it. Like, for example, I wrote 100,000 YouTube subscribers. Am I even close to it? Not really. But did I see huge growth and, progressively build up to it? Yeah. And I think it's cool to have those goals, maybe stuff that's slightly out of reach, but could be within reach, because I also wrote 250,000 followers on Instagram, and I never thought I'd hit that. And I've been lucky to surpass that. And like other goals I had, like, I remember one of my goals was to work with a clothing company, a supplement company. And I'm fortunate enough to work with, my two dream companies right now, Gymshark and Raw. Like, I'd even write those at the beginning of January 1st last year, because I didn't even think those were attainable. I remember just writing like any clothing company, any supplement company. And I'm super fortunate to work with the two I've been following forever and have been a big fan of. So yeah, definitely challenge you to write some ambitious goals. You might not fulfill all of them. There's a lot of goals I wrote on there that I didn't even come close to, or that I quit, 3 months in, 4 months in. Guess what? That's life. You're not going to accomplish every goal, but, challenge yourself, write out some goals that you want to achieve. I did it. I remember last year I did goals where I wrote like personal goals, I wrote professional goals, business goals, and then I wrote physical goals. So like, my personal goals, were a little different than my professional, a little different than my business goals, than my physical goals. So I think I wrote like 3 for each, and maybe I only accomplished 1 of each, but hey, that's cool for me. So yeah, New Year's, New Year. I love that mindset. Don't listen to the people who hate on people who are like, oh, the New Year's resolutions crowd's coming in. So what? Some dogs are coming in ready to eat. So yeah, get after it this New Year's. I'm sure I'll have another video up before New Year's actually starts, or if I don't, maybe I can talk more in depth about like goal setting and stuff. Not that I'm an expert at it by no means, but I remember watching videos on it last year, and it's cool to talk about it. So anyways, appreciate everyone watching this video. Stack of damn days. I'll see you in the next one.